Good afternoon, everyone. What a beautiful day to spend indoors. And I will first off congratulate the people that took the chairs in the front seat. Thank you. Nobody wants front row. Today we're doing Kinney's are doing a presentation on Quito, Ecuador, Brazil. Should be very interesting. We all know the Kinney's, Mark and Nancy. They're not couch potatoes. They're very active seniors. Oh, can I call you seniors? Okay, I think we should enjoy this presentation very much. Mark and Nancy travel a lot, and their presentations are always very interesting, very enjoyable. Thank you all for coming. That echo is really annoying.
Yeah.
Okay.
This. Yeah.
I know. Couldn't find the way.
So thank you all for coming today. This presentation is going to be about expectations and preconceptions and how they can be proven or disproven by experience. So if I say Amazon, what do you think? What do you say?
Fires. What else? Trees. Rainforest. Brazil. Piranhas. Any last ones? Natives.
Piranhas. Okay.
Water.
Okay, if I say Ecuador, what do you think?
Equator. Mountains. Jungle.
Giving up the Amazon. Lady of Guadalupe.
The Lady of Guadalupe.
Yes.
Someone else? Galapagos. Students? Aha, very good.
Students, you said?
That's mine. Monkeys.
Well, you're not alone, and you'll see that in our presentation.
Did I hear monkeys?
Yes.
Okay.
Any last ones?
Natives.
Natives.
Spanish.
Spanish. Espanol.
Okay. Very interesting. So you already know a lot. Really. This
So we can
is
go
a
home.
pretty good list here.
So I'd like to add a little bit to this presentation. We've
Okay.
not said anything about this, but the way these presentations are working out, you know, we've done a whole set of programs about our travels. It's turning out Nancy's doing a lot of the writing up of the narrative and designing what we're going to say and getting it in order and figuring out what is going to happen in our presentation. And I'm getting into doing a lot more of taking photos and integrating the photos into that script and making sure that the technology works. So you'll see that today, for
So-
better or for worse. I mean, you know.
So why would we go to Ecuador and the Amazon? We don't speak Spanish. We don't have Hispanic relatives or even many Hispanic friends. I had never been to South America, and Mark was once in Chile for a week, but that was it. We'd been to Mexico a couple of times with the kids or something like that, but that was about it. So Mark's brother called us about a year and a half ago, and he said, we're going to take one more big blowout trip. They're both almost 80, and so they're thinking they're old, and they don't want to, you know, commit themselves to big things anymore, but they wanted to do this trip, and they said, you want to go? And we said, well, where are you going? And as it turns out, Mark's brother's a biologist, and he had always been interested in Ecuador, the Galapagos, Darwin, all the kind of biology sort of stuff you could learn by being in that part of South America. And so that's what he wanted to do. And so when somebody says, you want to go somewhere, we almost always say yes. So anyway, both of us started looking for a tour company to run this with. We weren't up for planning the whole thing on our own. It's very complicated to go to the Galapagos, and we didn't want to take on all of that. So somebody recommended Road Scholar. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, there was a woman who did a presentation for us here, having gone with Road Scholar.
Right over there.
Okay. Then so that was a possibility. Another one was Overseas Adventure Travel, OAT. Some friends of ours who do work at Snow Mountain Ranch with us in the winter had been to Jamaica on one of their trips, and they were really excited about this organization. So we looked at both of them, and somehow OAT seemed to have a schedule that met our needs a little better. We would spend more time in the Galapagos with their trip than we would with Road Scholars. So we decided that that was the group that we were going to go with. So we're all notorious for putting things off. Making the final decision is really hard. So one day Steve called and he said, "We did it." And we practically had a heart attack. And they said, "We're going." We said, "Well, when are we going?" "Oh, we're going in January." Well, talk about a heart attack. We were in India in January. So we said, sorry, that isn't going to work for us. And so then we started looking around some more and found out they had the same trip, but it was going March 10th. We said, okay, great. This will work. We can shoehorn
So
everything in.
this is a small trip. There were 13 of us. And usually there were anywhere from 1 to 4 or 5 staff persons doing various things at various times during the trip.
So the question then becomes, where is this place? Where are we going? What are we doing? So we have a map and we'll show you. You can see how big Brazil is compared to everything else. And there's Ecuador, that little tiny purple place right there. So,
And you guys were really bright. I mean, it didn't occur to me for a while that Ecuador, equator went together.
So, see, I told you they already knew a whole lot. Yeah,
you did.
Okay. So the way it all worked out, we all had to make it to Atlanta because the flight that went to Quito was leaving out of Atlanta. So Mark's brother and his wife live in Ketchikan, Alaska. So they came from Alaska to Atlanta. We at the time were in Denver. So we went from Denver to Atlanta. Other people went from wherever they were. We had people from New Jersey and people from California and people from all over the country on our trip in that little group of 13. And we all ended up there and took the trip to let's see, it was a nighttime trip, wasn't it? And we got in about 10 o'clock or so. And they took us to the place called NH Collection Royal Quito. Now that was a strange name. We couldn't figure out where we were going to be staying, but it was really a beautiful hotel. And I don't know what the name was all about still.
Are we going to listen to Ross's video just before?
Calm down.
Okay.
So then Quito, population 2,300,000, not all that huge when you think of big cities, is at 9,000 feet in the Andes. Luckily, we had been living at 8,500 feet for a month, and so we weren't fazed by the altitude. Some people were. But anyway, we want to show you a little summary of the whole thing that was done by one of the people on our trip. Ross Jameson loves to take pictures and movies, and he does this kind of thing every time they take a trip. So he made it available to all of us who had been on the trip, and we'll show you the first half of that.
And then we'll go back and we'll show pictures and movies that we took, and we'll talk about some of the things that are in Ross's movie and explain some of that. And at that point, we're open to questions from you as we go along, however you feel you want to do that.
Now when you get the music too. They're from Seattle.
see the sculpture at the very top of the mountain?
Yeah. That's rock.
And termites.
Leaf cuttering.
And leaf carrying.
Shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
Very hard. But no, just with a good amount of rain since the river.
That's a lot.
Right. So
Yeah, this is it. This is it. This is away.
That's Ross and his wife. Karana. So I watched that movie and I think we were there for 3.5 days and we did all of that. And there's things that he didn't put in the movie. It was great. So where do we go next, Nancy?
We talked some about the various details here. This was our first guide. This is Celso Cardenas. He was a man with 2 master's degrees and much information. He was born in Ecuador in the Amazon part, and he's great. And this is Mark's brother and sister-in-law that were the ones who got us into this thing in the first place. So there's important people in this one picture.
The inset is the NH Collection Hotel where we stayed while we were in Quito.
And there it is in full color. It really was a beautiful place. One of the best parts was this wonderful breakfast buffet. And we can't even do it justice by showing you pictures of all the beautiful food. Our room, as you can see, is very nice, very ensuite bath, everything you'd ever want in a really nice hotel.
And on this slide, right back here, is a little kitchen, kind of a counter. And you can go there and ask the cook to cook you an egg any way you want it, and they will deliver it to your table. It's just really wonderful.
So moving right along.
In the morning, we heard music and events outside, and so we ran downstairs, and what did we see, Nancy?
This is a parade, and you can see over here 2 girls dressed in what look like school uniforms. And that's because the celebration here is for an anniversary of one of the secondary schools in the area, and the kids were walking to school on stilts that day. I suppose they were just trying to look taller or something. I don't know. Anyway, it was quite an adventure for them and a big exhibition for us for the first thing on the first day.
There were 2 or 3 times this many people on stilts, but I saved this slide because of this. Let's see if this is going to do this. No, it's not. Because the one in purple is upside down, right? He's being carried by the others at the moment. And he did a flip. That's what he's done. I mean, wow. I was blown away.
This is Celso again. He did a wonderful orientation for us. You know, mostly orientation is really boring. His was really good and all you needed to know to make the trip a success. So he took us downtown to see some of the history of the city of Quito. And you can see these beautiful, beautiful buildings. This is a very famous church. People call it the Gold Church. It has a long Catholic name to it, which I can't relate for you.
You'll see it on the next slide.
Yeah. Anyway.
One of the things we liked about OAT was they were really focused on education. So they were very interested in having us learn about what was going on. And the Gold Church turns out to be a church that does not allow photography. So what did the OAT folks do? Well, Celso had us line up, put our hands on the shoulders of the person in front of us, close our eyes and walk into the church, Iglesia de la Campaña de Jesús.
Yeah.
To see this. We didn't take those pictures. Those are the ones that are available on the internet, but that's what it looked like. Gold church.
Yeah. Okay, so that was our first big wow moment.
Is that all gold leaf?
It's
Yes.
it's gold. It's,
Yes.
yeah, the real thing.
Then he took us next door to this building, and the story about this building was really that
You see there's lots of little carvings here of little cherubs above the windows, and it's all very ornate.
the people who built this had an argument with the architect, and it ended up that the architect wasn't getting paid. So one of the ways that the architect got back to them was to add this little appendage to the little cherub there at the top of one of the windows.
And you can see that it's clear it's a male. This is walking down the street. You can see lots and lots of people who don't need any cars in these streets. It's all walking streets.
One of the things that it turns out Ecuador is proud of and famous for is chocolate. This is the chocolate seed pod. These are what chocolate seeds look like. And this lady
As
talks
Celso
a
told
little
you,
bit about
I'm going
that.
to explain a little bit about this place and about the actual reality of chocolate and cacao of Ecuador, okay? And this moment, the cacao is one of the most important products that Ecuador exports, yeah? And why that I give you a historical idea, in the 1910s, Ecuador, more than 70% of the economy of this country used to depend on export cocoa beans. Was the base of the economy, more important than nowadays the oil.
And then, of course, after she finished explaining what's on that display on the wall over there about the production of chocolate and what's important, we had a chance to sample some and to purchase some. It turns out that Ecuadorian cacao is very famous because of the gourmet beans. It's from Ecuador that most of the fine aroma chocolate comes from. So 60% of the chocolate beans that allow chocolate to become the kind that crispy, crick, it breaks apart, that's from Ecuador,
And
mostly.
if it's shiny, there's a lot of things that are about the chocolate that make it special.
And we like the fact that the OAT program had provided this kind of an opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about the locale.
So
This lady was selling ice cream. It was only about 80 degrees that day. And as Celso said, that ice cream never melts. So we didn't try it.
we were sure it had to be toxic somehow. So, yeah, this is Calle La Ronda, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the place where we went to have our welcome lunch. The travel company wanted us to have a very special Ecuadorian lunch for the first time we had one. And so here we are in this tiny little walking street. So we are at the Cafe La Negra Mala. That means the bad black lady. This is a house where there was some plotting going on, right, Mark?
Right, 1935.
So they say it was the bad black lady's house because of the plots that were being hatched there. But the lady that runs the restaurant had to hug everybody who came in. She was a hugging person. And notice our placemats. We could choose from a couple of different alternatives, and they made me, as some of you know, I have a really weird diet, and they made me a meal which was really, really good, and it didn't give me a headache, so that was wonderful. When we finished, we went back outside, and these people were waiting for us. I'm sure Celso tipped them off that that would be the time when we would be coming out. And so here they are. This lady has a whole armload of shawls, which she is going to be selling should you want one.
And the story is that these folks as artists have a hard time making a living. And so Oat develops relationships with this kind of artist and brings their groups, and they have groups coming through Quito probably every other week on average. They do a lot of programming in Ecuador. And the ladies are doing the shawls. The fellow there show you some little placards that are painted that are pretty amazing.
So show him the next one. This is his paintings. At one time, that young man was a member of a gang. He was doing a lot of stuff that was really illegal and immoral and bad. And he decided to reform his life and took up painting. And this is his talent now.
Were the shawls nice?
Well, I think so. I got one from my daughter and one from my granddaughter. And my granddaughter wore hers to her father-daughter ball at school. And I asked my daughter if she'd worn hers yet. And she said she hadn't found anywhere nice enough to wear it yet.
We were cautioned about taking pictures of the artists. And so I made a special effort to ask this lady if I could pay her and take her picture. And when she said yes, I did so. And that's a better close-up of the shawl and the kind of weaving that's done. And the fabric was really soft. It was wool, but it was very, very soft wool. Then we went up the street and met this young lady.
And Celso asked everybody, would they mind meeting a lady whose profession was, well, you might call her politely, a lady of the night. And would we like to know how she made her living and what kind of person she was, and just have a conversation with her. She would be having a conversation in Spanish and he would be translating while we were talking with her. And we all agreed that, sure, this is something we could do. He said, I just wanted to ask you, some people are really put off by this kind of thing and I don't want to embarrass anybody. So, but nobody opted out. So there we are having a conversation with her.
So Celso hired her.
Yeah.
And instead of going to the room and doing what people you normally do, we had this conversation instead. And it turns out she has 4 kids, 5 kids?
4 kids to support.
And this is a way in which she can provide enough income for her family to do well. She can send the kids to school and so forth. And she's a beautiful woman. And it turns out that the Ecuadorian government controls this quite well. So she's medically tested every other week or every 3rd week. And there are policemen that are close at hand. So if something happens, she's got a safety net there. But she acknowledged it was a pretty rough life, and she wasn't sure how long she could keep that going. But this was she thought this was her best options in life at the moment.
Right. So if you look here up on top of the hill, you'll see a statue of a Madonna, which is not an uncommon thing to see in South America. And we will have more to say about her in a little bit.
And you saw a picture in the movie of the cathedral that's there. In the afternoon, the first 2 afternoons, we had free time. And we knew that was coming up. And we remembered that now, 2 years ago, when we were at Snow Mountain Ranch, the young lady who was the receptionist at the HR office was from Quito. And so we got in touch with her, emailed her, and said, we're coming to Quito. Could we meet you? And she said, for sure. And then as time drew close, she emailed back and said, I'm really sorry. I have an opportunity to go to New York City and study, and I will not be in Quito when you're there in March. But my younger sister will be there, and my family would love to meet you. and can I pass you on to them? So here we are, the Bravos,
Yeah. Okay. This is Camilla, the younger sister.
14.
Yeah, 14, high school kid, and her parents. Camilo, her dad, is the man who's in charge of transportation of buses and large trucks that go through Quito. So a very responsible position in the city. And they came with their big van and took us to the hill where the Madonna is located. From that hill, you can see all over Quito. You can see the extent of the development, the huge buildings. This is that cathedral that we showed you before, and you can see everything all around from that hill.
Quito is a rift valley. It's surrounded by volcanoes. There are 4 really large volcanoes around it, most of them above 14,000 feet. But the city itself is like 35 miles long and 3 to 4 miles wide. And so the bus system is really important. The bus system probably is pretty slow. It spews a lot of diesel fuel, but for 25 cents, you go from one town to the other. And everywhere you look, there's this kind of development and no slums. These buildings all look good. We are in the park where this Madonna is. And the Madonna is an aluminum sculpture, we're told, made out of 8,000 sheets of aluminum. And Nancy, you know more.
And under her feet is a dragon representing a conquered devil. See, she's on top and the dragon's on the bottom with under her feet. And supposedly she's protecting the city and in the world, in some sense, from the dragons of the world. And so there you go.
And they took us out to dinner and they showed us other places around town as well that afternoon. The next morning, the All program took us to Sinamune. You heard them on the movie. And this is a program that the fellow who has his back to us started quite a few years ago. They have toured all over the world, and it's for challenged individuals to give them experience, to learn a skill, to be comfortable with being in public and all of that.
This man's name is Edgar Palacios, and he is known all around the city of Quito. He's a trumpeter, and he's being introduced by Celso.
One of the things we liked about this was we not only went to hear them, but we got involved with them.
They asked us to dance, and apparently that was very important to them. Celso asked us if we would be willing to participate that way, because that would validate the kids who had been doing all of this education to learn how to dance and how to play instruments. And we said, sure, we'd be happy to dance with them. So there we go. After that, we all went off to the real equator. There's a place at 000000 where you can be in the equator. So one of us is in the southern hemisphere and the other is in the northern hemisphere in this picture.
But I think the line at the bottom is really interesting. Calculated with GPS. I mean, those of us that sail know GPS came in 25 years ago. And so this tourist area started before GPS. And some of the places that claim to be on the equator are 100 yards away. And so when GPS came along, all of a sudden they had a better way to know where the equator really was. And so this whole tourist area moved a little. And so this place says we're right there. And we've got a way to show you that proves that. But here's our group, all 13 of us. I wish we could get rid of the stuff at the very top and to the right of this picture, but I guess that's given. Celso's behind the inset there. Well, they had us do two things. One was on the equator, they had a nail and they had eggs. And they said, because the forces of the world are balanced at the equator, you should be able to balance the egg on the top of the nail. Well, all of us didn't try to do that. I'm guessing maybe 8 or 9 of us tried to balance the egg on the nail. And Wanda succeeded. Steve and I and Nancy, we worked at it, but it didn't happen. The guide, of course, had gone there, put it on the nail. 10 seconds later, it's balanced. But it's a tricky thing to do. So they had us do that. And then, how many of you have heard of the Coriolis effect? Yeah, well, some of you. What's the Coriolis effect?
There's a different way. The bathtub drains different ways depending on which hemisphere.
Right. So in your home here, when you drain a sink, the water will flow around and around and around. So here we are, right at the equator.
Okay. Ready? Watch the surface, please. 1, 2, 3. Straight. Yes. So the circles, the spinning, just straight down. Now we're going to the southern hemisphere, okay? Follow me this way. 1, 2, 3. Here is clockwise. Look at like cyclones and typhoons in the southern hemisphere. Clockwise. That's right. And now we're going to the northern hemisphere.
So I'm not going to show you the northern hemisphere because that just takes more time. But I was
really did.
flabbergasted that he moved maybe 10 feet. And already there's this force.
He moved about as much as from you to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's amazing. So.
Did it go the same direction? Was it both counterclockwise, one clockwise?
No. So the southern hemisphere was clockwise. The northern hemisphere is counterclockwise.
Yeah.
Yes.
So on the way back, here's Celso again with another adventure for us. This was called, what, Discovery, something in Discovery, Adventure in Discovery, something like that. He wanted to take us to a craft brewery, which had just started, so he could have some lunch. They didn't offer us lunch every day on this tour, and this was one of the days when they weren't giving us lunch. So Celso decided we should all have lunch anyway. So he took us to the brewery and we tried their beer, and we also the story is that this young woman is from Romania. She met her husband, who was Ecuadorian, on the internet, and eventually ended up going there. And you know the story. They got married, they started the brewery, and she's making Romanian sausage and bread, and he's making beer. And so they're having this, the way that they can service a lot of people's food needs is to combine their talents. And see, we're all ready to join the festivities. There were 2 kinds of beer, dark and light. And then on the way back in Quito again, he took us in a Quito market, which you can see is just a riot of color and beautiful food that you can get anything that you want here. So they use American money in Ecuador, which blew our minds to begin with. They use American coins for bills. So they actually make dollar coins, big dollar coins. We don't use the ones that they make. But anyway, he gave us each one of those and said, go find something in the market that you think that I will not be able to identify. And so we all went and chose things that were unusual to us. And he went through the list and he said, okay, well, I know this one, this is this, and this is this, and this is this. We had gotten a plastic bag of stuff about this big. and it was bath salts. But he said ours was flour of some sort. And we said, no, this is not flour. The person who sold it to us told us it was bath salts. And he looked at it very skeptically. But anyway, he agreed that we had stumped him, finally.
So I wanted to show you the pig. I mean, oftentimes in our travels around the world, we've seen in markets the
But
kind
you-
of presentation
You
of
can't see him.
food that
is in front of it.
is, I think Americans think of as gross or something. I mean, you just don't see that put up. But that was the pig, and I don't know what it takes to.
Yeah, we can't see.
And did you mention, Nancy, while I was doing that Celso had bought some fruit and cut it up and had us try? So this was sopapilla that he was serving to us. And that's when Dick finished it. Hey, that's great.
There he is. There he is, right there.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So, yeah, it had been roasted in that form. And you could buy any amount of that you wanted if you like to eat pork.
Got to get rid of that, I think. My remote isn't working.
But anyway, you can see all of the beautiful fruits in the different colors and different skin that you might not recognize. It was.
And I spoke wrong. This is soursop.
Soursop.
And soursop is a fruit that's native from the Caribbean South. When we sailed through the Caribbean in the 80s, we came across this fruit, and it was about the size of a mango, maybe a little larger than a big mango. But here it was the size of a
cantaloupe, huge
bigger than a
cantaloupe.
football.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Mm.
Well, let's see if we can make this
Oh,
work.
we certainly did. Oh, extremely good.
Oh, yes.
Oh, very good. That afternoon, the Bravos came and picked us up again because they were going to take us to another attraction. I mean, these people were untiring. And so this time they took us to the Teleferico, which is a gondola that goes up the side of the volcano Pichincha, which is in the city of Quito. Some of the other volcanoes in the area, Antisana, Cotopaxi, and Chimborazo, were highlighted, but we were actually on Pichincha. It was at 12,000 feet, Mark, is that right?
Yes, but if you read altitude, Antisana is 5,700 meters. That's 15,000 feet. Chimborazo is at 62,000 meters. I mean, these are tall mountains. But when you start at 9,000, it's not that big.
By the way, there are 32 volcanoes active and extinct in Ecuador and 15 more in the Galapagos. So that for a total of 47 volcanoes in one small country.
So we had a wonderful afternoon, but it was very rainy.
Yeah, out of luck, it rained.
Do they have earthquakes?
Oh, they have, yeah, and they have also active volcanoes. There's a lot of grumbling around in some of these volcanoes. And so you never quite know whether something might happen, but you take your chances.
So the next morning we were off to Coca. Yes, Ben.
They have skiing in those mountains.
I do believe.
Well, maybe. I'm not sure that there
Right.
is some snow. Yeah, but it wasn't reliable, I think. I'm not sure.
Yes, Marlene.
All that green area is at the Amazon forest?
Yeah, no.
I don't know. The green area is Ecuador. And the Amazon is to the right, definitely to the right of Coca. And probably starting around Tolcan, Ibarra, and coming all the way down, I would guess, by Tina and Pollo and Macas, and then to the right.
Yes. That's the Ecuadorian Amazon. You know, there's the Brazilian Amazon and the Peruvian Amazon and the Bolivian Amazon, and a lot of countries in South America are also part of the Amazon. So we're understanding that there is some penetration of the smoke from the fires in Brazil into Ecuador at this time. We don't know how much. We haven't got any details, but the maps show that there is smoke in the area.
So we landed at Coca and then took a 2-hour trip on a canoe. And we were on that canoe taking this picture. And that canoe is very similar to the one in front of us. And it has been raining, so the plastic curtains are down on the side. I had to pull this curtain apart in order to take a picture. Coca River is
The Napo River.
The Napo River is quite wide, pretty shallow. It's a sandy-bottomed river, so the pilot has to watch the water to see where the channel is today because it changes all the time. And even so, there's some pretty large commercial traffic on that river. I was a little surprised at that. And we're traveling, I'd guess, 20, 25 miles an hour, and it was a 2-hour trip.
We had 200 horsepower outboard on the back of our
Two
canoe.
of them.
200 horsepower outboards on the back of our canoe.
And we were headed to Anyango community, the Napo Cultural Center. And they treated us very, very well. They met us with the inset to the right, the little towels that you could wipe your forehead, wipe your hands.
They were refrigerated towels.
They did that once or twice a day. It's
and
great.
Juice here. And then this was cheese and an olive. And this one was
fried fish, wasn't it?
Something in
And a plantain.
Yeah, and one of the fruits, so dragon fruit, right, with a grape on top. So nice little hors d'oeuvres.
And we were given a chance to settle in a little, and we were told, here are boots to wear, and you should plan to wear those every day. But if you think it's going to be drier that day and you want to risk wearing your own footwear, you can do that. And there were several days when it was pretty dry and some people wore their regular footwear, but it was nice to have the boots. You really needed them. Our accommodations included a solar hot water heater, which kept the water really hot. These raised buildings with a little meeting area outside of the room, and either twin beds or a double bed like this with a very well constructed mosquito net that you covered the bed platform with at night, and a toilet and wash up area as well. And then that afternoon we had our first tour in the Amazon, and you saw the movie of the termites. Well, these are the termites, and the inset there is a hand of one of the gals in our group with termites on their hand. Yeah, I mean, you think, well, she's going to get bit. But of course, termites don't have teeth. They have the ability to chemically break down the cellulose. So it's just fine. You put your hand in the hive and pull it out, and they're harmless.
The man to the right that you see there, you'll see everywhere, he's Freddie. He was Celso's right-hand man in the Amazon. And he was the one who carried the ponchos when we went somewhere and distributed them when we needed them. He knew the name of everything. His English was improving, we could see, as he talked.
And we saw some incredible things.
They're all trying to stay hidden. That is the name of the game in the Amazon, to stay in such a way that no one will know you're there, because they'll eat you if they do know. So you can see people, the insects trying to stay on a surface where they won't be seen.
Is that a turtle?
No, that's a really small,
It was a frog, right?
That's a frog.
Yeah, it's a frog.
And the frog was probably the inch and a half. Sorry, it's out of focus. I do the best I can.
Tree bark?
Yeah, it's on a leaf.
Yeah.
And then we met this guy, but there he is. I mean, there's a little bit of humor that the Ecuadorians have of trying to trick us into thinking that everything is alive. While we were walking, we just walked right past this baby greater yellow-headed vulture. And he or she was not concerned about our being there at all.
You see
Yes.
a walking stick sort of thing? Yeah, it is. And
We saw a lot of red howler monkeys.
Did they at all interested in you?
No.
well,
We were in a boat at this point.
we couldn't figure out if they were performing for us or if they were just performing for their own enjoyment.
But later on, what I wanted to mention was these are good examples of use of the prehensile tail. It's like they have 5 legs instead of 4. And they're very adept at making use of the tail and so forth. But this guy was climbing around and then just laid down on the log and had a nap while we were watching. I mean, not looking over their shoulder to make sure we were okay or that we were going to be, a danger to him.
This is what we had gone there to see, was the parrots on the clay bank. These parrots eat seeds of plants which are toxic. And in order to clear their system of the toxic parts of the seeds, they have to eat clay. And this is a particular place where they have found that the clay is amenable to their digestive system. So they gather there and eat clay on most days.
So the way this is happening is we're in our canoe, the canoe that you saw in the very beginning, and we're 150 feet from shore. And then the bank is another 50 feet away. So I'm using a 420 millimeter lens to take the picture. And the actual picture was 6 or 8 times as big as this little cropped section of it. So how many, see, I said this set up and then I messed it up or whatever. Can you see parrots in this picture?
Yeah.
How many do you see? Anybody see 4?
Oh, I see 4.
Anybody see 6? I mean, I didn't count exactly on this particular slide. There's 10 or 12 or 14 of them in this picture. The camouflage is amazing.
Yes, over there. Yeah. When you look at that picture at first,
I don't know whether
see,
that's a
it's
parrot
just
or a
leaves.
parakeet, but yes.
Some are parakeets as well. They have the same problem with the clay, needing the clay.
It's just that the color was a little different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's some here. There's one in flight. There's 3 or 4. I'm losing my cursor here.
There's one.
Oops.
Oops. Yes, you moved on.
Down at the bottom right, there are 3 or 4. Is that the same picture?
No, that's a different picture. That's the picture.
That's the big. Down at the bottom right, there's 3 or 4 in flight. In the middle, there's 3 or 4 right.
Yes.
Several right here.
Here.
There's several right down in here.
And then there's,
So it's pretty amazing how well they fit into their environment. And here's a couple of other red howler monkeys, prehensile tail.
And apparently this show by the monkeys is not what they usually see when they take a group on the canoe out to see the parrots. And so we got an extra special show, according to Celso.
Saw lots of birds. These are mostly cattle egrets, the ones with the yellow head. And perhaps the one second from the left is a snowy egret. It's a little difficult to tell for sure. And this is an orange-backed tupial. I was really pretty good at taking the pictures, but really not very good at figuring out what it was.
So Mark ended up sending these pictures to his sister-in-law, who loves birds, and she sent back as much as she could tell about all of what these birds were. So we're relying on Grace's birding.
Then we were off to the school and meeting with them, and here we are. We're teaching them the hokey pokey at this point.
These are 8th graders.
And then Celso was reading a story to the young kids. But we had been asked by OAT to bring gifts to give to kids. And so the OAT folks thought, it's not a good idea just to give kids gifts. They're going to have to earn them. So they earned them by coming out with us. We made a big circle. Well, that's not good. Let's go back.
So anyway,
we made a big circle outside, and here's Nancy running around the circle. We played duck, duck, goose. So each kid had to pick one of us and try to run around the group the opposite way that the adult did. You know the game, right? And get back to the space that the adult left first, right? And here's Nancy really working hard to beat her little kid around the circle. The thing was none of us could beat those kids.
No.
None of us.
No. Nobody failed to earn their gift.
When she read the story, was it in English?
Spanish.
Spanish.
Yes. Yeah. So here's my brother at the top of that picture talking with the little kid who beat him around the circle.
Yeah, right.
And here we all are having our pictures taken together.
And the kids all have their gifts.
Then it was off to the culture center, and we saw another kind of monkey, and I don't know the name of this monkey. We saw 4 different kinds of monkeys while we were there. Now this woodpecker, which reminded me a lot of, which one we have around here? Pileated. Exactly. We think is the crimson-crested woodpecker. And this guy, we think I have a name for it later on, but we're not sure. There's not enough there to tie for sure. This is from a palm tree. I didn't find out what the fruit's called, but say again? Perhaps. I just don't know.
They had a very pasty flavor. It wasn't it didn't taste like much. And so I don't know what they really were, but they were really pretty.
Remember Ross's movie, and it showed the woman, and she had a machete, and she was clearing the ground? They had taken us out into her garden. That's her garden. And this palm tree was growing in that garden. And then they said, we need some of this for lunch. Will one of you cut it down? And of course, it's my brother who cut it down. So here he is with his fruit, having succeeded. And then we went into their home, and they taught us how to make the meal, and we all helped out with the meal. This fellow is talking about, this is Heart of Palm. I think there's a movie. Oh, this is another part of the movie, so let me play this for you. Rain, yes.
Yeah, it was raining. It was just coming down a bucket. Yeah.
So when the palm tree dies, they often seed them so that the grubs will grow in the palm. And these are delicacy. We found these in the market back in Coca when we came back, and they had, remember the guide was eating one? Well, my brother did that too. And I guess that was fine. I didn't try that. But then they cooked them. So first he bit the head off the grub and then ate the rest of it. And then we skewered them and then cut them so that they would not burst, and then folded them into palm leaves and roasted them. And they were really good roasted. Several of us, quite a few of us ate them. Good protein. We also had a chance to mash up the potato. This is a yam.
Yucca.
Yucca.
Yucca. Yes.
Got the yuccas from the garden and boiled it for 30 minutes. And now what she's doing is mashing it, right?
And so then they're going to let that ferment and make a beer out of it.
So remember, we're making chicha, the traditional drink. This is basically a fermented drink.
What's the stick? Is that mahogany?
No, it's a type of ironwood called Cruz Caspia.
Is this normally a group activity?
It's women activity. Grandmother, mother, and the kids, but girls.
Us guys are gonna head out with the chainsaw.
We ate the meal.
Do they make those dishes?
Though, yes, they do make those dishes, sort of. If you have a coconut palm, that is the coconut palm shell cut in half, and then artistic work on the outside. Yeah, the coconut palm is a very versatile fruit. It's very, very useful.
And it was really good. This was catfish and hearts of palm with some salt and pepper and just roasted over the fire. It was delicious.
The owl-eyed butterfly was just incredible. About 3 inches long, pretty good sized butterfly. Some big flowers around.
These birds would come and sit on the roof of the main building where we had our meals and sing beautifully. I don't know what the name is, but they were great singers. I don't know.
The next day, we had an opportunity to climb up above the canopy so that we could see the rainforest from above. We climbed up that structure, and here we are. We were able to see the Napo River, and you can see how much the sandbar exists in the river.
This is where they caught the catfish, right out front.
But of course, it was raining. But here we are. These are squirrel monkeys, and you can see the mother with the baby on her back. And the reason why the photo is grainy is it really wasn't very light that day. And so cameras have a great deal of trouble having enough light to take a good picture, especially of a moving object from a distance. I don't get in a lot of pictures because I'm usually behind the camera.
So I had to take his picture.
So then after we had viewed the Amazon from the top of the canopy, we went over to the Napo Center Cultural Center, and this is the way we were greeted.
See on the boots, we're wearing the boots.
Fantastic.
Buenos dias.
These ladies have their own association, and that is very unusual. Women don't do that kind of thing in this cultural setting.
Ground. Is that ground or is that board? You know?
That's mud. That's just hardened mud.
And of course, they got us involved too. They used two instruments, a drum and a turtle shell. And they rub the turtle shell. The turtle shell has been treated with probably beeswax, something that makes it a little bit sticky. And you can rub it and make a noise. I couldn't, but they can. And then right outside, there was this guy.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And that's all I had time to get.
They also had crafts to sell at that same place.
I think there are several pictures of great kiskadees earlier, but I didn't have a good enough shot to confirm, but that one you could confirm. This is a kokoi heron, sort of like our blue heron. This guy's really kind of interesting, very colorful. Bird about the size of, maybe a little bigger than a partridge or a pheasant. Very, very colorful. Either the Hoatzin or the stinky turkey. And why is it called the stinky turkey?
It's because of its digestive system, and it's rather primitive. So when you're around this bird very much, he emits quite an odor, apparently.
So it's not a game bird. They don't hunt it. Nobody likes it very much in terms of eating it or whatever, but it is certainly gorgeous. And that's Ani behind the picture there at the bottom right. Greater Ani. The pied plover, we see birds that look like that around us. Oh yeah, I was going to get the name of these turtles, but I don't know yet. Great egret. We don't see anything like these at all. The ladder-tailed nightjar.
Whippoorwill.
Dragonfly, yes. One of the ancient insects that's still doing very well, thank you. As I mentioned, the Napo River is a really active river. The bank is eroding and growing back, and trees are falling into it all the time, and the channel is moving back and forth. The only other place I've ever been in my life that is sort of like that are the rivers in northern Alaska, where there's permafrost below the river, and the rivers don't make so much a channel as they move back and forth on top of the permafrost. And so it's a constant, we got to learn where the river is this year, or we've got to learn where the river is this month kind of proposition. And that's the way this river is. So how many of these guys are there? 6 of the long-nosed bats. And they're sleeping during the day and keeping their energy for feeding at night. But again, a lot of the reasons why I was able to take these pictures was because of the guiding that the OAT folks did to get us to the right place, to call our attention to, did you see the bird there, and like that. They were just really marvelous. A swallowtail butterfly. One afternoon we were taking up this little small river, and so we were not in our big canoe, we were in 2 smaller canoes like the one you see that's part of our group ahead of us there. It was in this river that we saw the white-throated toucan, but we also saw the fish, piranha.
Yeah.
That one of our guides caught the piranha.
Yeah, Freddie caught a piranha and pulled it off and showed it to us. He said, "Oh, that's a piranha, huh?" Yeah, look, yeah.
They eat piranha, yes.
Yeah.
And piranha are not the animal that are constantly eating humans when they walk across the river. Piranhas will eat humans, but mostly when they're very hungry or when they smell blood. But most of the time, they're harmless. If they're well fed, they're really not a carnivorous kind of animal at all. They have a very bad reputation. They have really tough looking teeth. This guy, I think, is a thrush. He was pointed out to us, but he was really well hidden. And then as it was getting very dark, we came across this black caiman.
A very scary beast.
Probably 6, 7 feet long, just resting there.
The kind you wouldn't want to meet on a dark and stormy night.
Right. Some beautiful flowers. I haven't shown you hardly any of the flowers pictures I took. I didn't want to bore you too much. This is the speckled chachalaca. That shot isn't very good, but his breast is speckled. The rest of him is that brown that you see there. In one morning, they took us out for an early morning photo shoot. And, you know, we stayed in sight of the commons and took pictures of birds. It was amazing. On the way back, we again had a chance to see there really is quite a bit of community activity along the Napo River. It's not the pristine, unspoiled rainforest that I sort of had in my mythical memory. It's got a lot of thriving communities and people earning livelihoods. And I guess I did not include shots in this presentation, but there are several locations where there's evidence of oil refinery and oil docks, but that is all old here. So much of that is in disrepair. Looks like it's not being used currently. And just a shot to show how the riverbed is constantly changing.
Most of the vegetation is,
Are you asking what is the vegetation?
the marking how close, how it's right there, there's no beach, there's no.
Oh, no.
Exactly. And that's pretty much the way most of the riverbank is like that. We went through the market in Coca just before we boarded the bus and the train and the plane back to Quito. They're very much marketing a meal. So here's a chicken, and they've got the tomato and the onion and whatever else you need in order to make your meal that night. And they sell it that way. And they sell fish live and dead. Quite a few mussels and shrimp. I think I have a shot. I don't. I took out the shot of the grubs. So they were selling the grubs that they had roasted. So you could buy them there. So the last part of our trip, we went back to Quito, spent a night, and then we all went on a special trip to Papalacta Hot Springs. So here we are on the road, leaving the capital, and you really can see the Rift Valley that is runs along right through the valley where Quito is. But we crossed the Continental Divide as we went to Papalacta. And what intrigued me about this was they haven't developed that at all as a location. It's not a tourist spot. So here we are, we're probably at around 14,000 feet here. I mean, it was cold and wet and stormy. And there was a little itty bitty chapel there, but nothing else. So we didn't spend much time. When we got to Papalacta Hot Springs, the first thing we did was go on a nature hike. And so we're walking down we're following a little stream, and one of the first things we see is this yard with llamas. The stream was absolutely gorgeous, so I got into taking a number of pictures of the stream and the water rushing and the pretty flowers that were along the bank.
They were mostly orchids. So various different sizes. This is an orchid. This little thing right here, it grows on a leaf.
There's another orchid.
Yeah.
And then the hot springs. And so we all paid to go in and soak for a while in the hot springs. You could have the hot water
natural hot spring
falling on your shoulders, or you could just swim around in the pool and laze. It was delightful. That was really great.
How many laps?
Say again?
How many laps?
I didn't do many laps. I did 3 or 4.
What was the water temperature, do you know?
It was different pools with different temperatures, and I don't have the exact ones.
Of course, it was
They were
metric.
in the 80 to 100 range. So you could go from the hot to the cooler, or vice versa, which we did. But you didn't want to stay in the hot pool very long. I didn't. And then it was back to Quito. And so from there, we spent a night. And then our next plane flight, where did we go, Nancy?
We went to
Guayaquil?
And then from there to the Galapagos. And on the 12th, we will show you how we spent the next week on a 84-foot catamaran, an air-conditioned ship with a resident chef and the whole 9 yards. It was quite an interesting time. So let's check and see if we found out or confirmed or disconfirmed your ideas. So about the Amazon, we talked a little bit about the fires, but not so much, we hope, in Ecuador. A lot of trees. See a lot of trees? You saw rainforest. We didn't talk about Brazil because we weren't in Brazil. You saw the piranha. And natives, yes. The people that we didn't say, but the people in the Amazon were Quechua people, and they spoke Quechua. So they didn't really speak Spanish. So Spanish was a learned language for them, as well as they're trying to learn English at the same time. And
so let me say,
lots of water.
The the cultural center we were staying at is a Quechuan village.
Yeah.
And their industry is the center. And they run the school for their kids and also for the kids in that area. Some of them come across the river every day to go to school. And when we went to have the lunch, we were visiting one of the family homes, and they were sharing their home with us and making the meal together with us.
Yeah. Another one of Celso's contacts and adventure and culture that he thought we ought to know about. So let's see, what about Ecuador? See, you said Spanish. Well, yes, Spanish and Quechua and other languages, I'm sure, that we don't have any idea are present in Ecuador. The equator, mountains, not just mountains, volcanoes, 14,000-foot volcanoes everywhere. Jungle, you saw that, right? Lady of Guadalupe, no, it wasn't the Lady of Guadalupe, it was the, what was her name? I wrote it down here just in case you wanted to know. La Virgen del Panacillo. That's what she was. Sorry, my Spanish is very bad. And the Galapagos, which we'll talk about next time, you saw students, and you saw monkeys, and you saw natives. See, you know it. You knew it all to start with, right? It's good. A good summary of what we talked about was what you already knew, and you got to confirm it or disconfirm it, whichever way happened for you. So, questions?
So do you have questions?
Anything about the bio?
The bio, the Mayan people, not a thing.
No,
No.
in Peru. In Peru, yeah. That would have been a trip we could have taken. We could
Say
have
again?
gone to Ecuador and to,
Incas in Peru.
Yeah,
Mayans
that's
in
right.
Central America.
yeah, right. And, yeah, we could have gone
Yep, very
to
good.
see Incas in Peru. We didn't do it.
Well, I hope we didn't bore you. So I would really appreciate some feedback of this session, especially feedback that'll help a session about the Galapagos be of more interest to you. We'll do our best to be able to do that. So thank you for coming.